news for you at this hour, though. Reports that North Korea is getting ready to launch another ballistic missile. This is less than a day after the rogue regime claims that it tested a hydrogen bomb 5 or 6 times more powerful than the one used on Hiroshima.
The UN Security Council now calling an emergency meeting this morning. Benjamin Hall live for us in London with the very latest. Good morning, Benjamin.
Good morning, Todd and Heather. Well, look, absolutely worrying news today. It seems as if North Korea may be preparing to double down on yesterday's nuclear test. First, that big test yesterday, and now signs, according to the South Korean defense officials, that they may be preparing to test an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile. So yesterday they conducted their 6th nuclear test, which they claim was a miniaturized hydrogen bomb, believed to be 10 times more powerful than anything they've tested in the past. And then if today's test goes ahead, they will effectively be testing the possible delivery system for that bomb, and all eyes will be on the distance, if indeed it goes ahead, and whether or not it could hit the U.S. mainland. Today, South Korea responded to yesterday's test with live-fire exercises of their own, with both ground and air-launched missiles. The drills by the South simulated the targeting of the nuclear site where North Korea carried out that bomb test deep inside a mountain. The U.S. have also responded, with Secretary Mattis issuing a threat of his own.
Any threat to the United States or its territories or our allies will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming. We are not looking to the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea. But as I said, we have many options to do so.
The continued provocations from North Korea have led to a dangerous face-off between the North and the world amid global condemnation, including, surprisingly, from both Russia and China. And now, South Korea defense officials also told the parliament there that the U.S. would seek to deploy a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier to the region. And yesterday, President Donald Trump tweeted that the U.S. might consider stopping all trade with countries that did business with the North, to which the Chinese have just responded, saying that is unacceptable and unfair. But again, all eyes today on this possible ICBM test out of North Korea. Back to you guys.
Absolutely frightening times all over, and it's just been escalated by North Korea. Benjamin Hall, thanks so much.
Yeah, in the meantime, former UN Ambassador John Bolton says that sanctions actually do very little to dissuade North Korea.
Yeah, and as the world community looks to curb the country's nuclear program, Bolton says Iran needs to be more of a focus.
One country that's almost never mentioned is Iran. You don't think Iran isn't supplying North Korea with technology, with financial resources. They're twinned on their ballistic missile program and I think on their nuclear programs. Iran's not going to pay any attention to more sanctions, that's for sure. Sanctions simply give people a warm and fuzzy feeling that we're doing something about North Korea. We are not. If this administration follows the same policies as the Clinton, Bush, and Obama administrations of carrots and sticks and efforts to persuade North Korea, it will fail just like they did.
Back to our country now, specifically the situation there in Texas. Also breaking, thousands already dealing with the worst natural disaster in U.S. history. Now have a new concern, looters.
Yeah, but some refusing to become a target once again, and they have a stern message to thieves. If you loot, we shoot.
Griff Jenkins kicks off our coverage live in Atascocita, Texas, where neighbors are armed and ready. Griff?
Hey, Todd and Heather, good morning. That's right. I mean, you just take a look at the sign over my shoulder. You loot, we'll shoot, with a little smiley face there, meaning they'll gladly defend their property. And the reason that the residents are on edge is because they had to pull their debris, some things they could salvage out. In fact, if you'll just look over here to my left a little bit, you can see all of the residents here. The waters have receded in most parts of Houston, in the Houston area, save that one area near the reservoirs where the flooding continues. But people have had to pull their belongings out on the street and try and organize it to assess the damage inside the house. And people have reported looters driving by and picking through their stuff. It's compounded because it's as the city and the mayor tries to get the debris removal on fast track. Here's what Mayor Turner had to say yesterday about that problem.
Most of the city is now dry, and people are already putting out their heavy debris. Now, the city of Houston started on Thursday picking up this heavy debris, but we have to get it done like now. It can't be sitting around 30, 45, 2 months from now. And so advanced funding for debris removal, he understood it. It was a very productive meeting.
Now, we have heard that there were no arrests of looters, although early on, certainly the mayor talking about some armed robberies happening. So we're trying to get a little better handle on exactly how significant the problem is. But clearly, the residents here not taking any chances, letting looters know what will happen if they come here. Guys?
Yeah, like he said so many times last week, as we've been covering this, brings out the best in people and unfortunately the worst in people.
So true.
Yeah. Thank you, Griff. Well, the president and First Lady observing a national day of prayer in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. After church in D.C., the First Lady tweeting this: "The president and I are wishing you many blessings, and even a hurricane couldn't stop these God-fearing Texans from praying." This church was destroyed in floodwater, so parishioners set up a tent and then held Sunday services outside.
All right, 5 minutes after the hour now, and on the heels of Hurricane Harvey, all eyes now turning to Hurricane Irma.
Yeah, another one, the monster storm intensifying to a Category 3, and it's only getting stronger as it moves towards the Caribbean, where it is expected to make landfall as early as tomorrow.
And it could impact the East Coast. Adam Klotz joins us live with Irma's latest path. Adam, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. The new information coming in just through the overnight hours as we have our first hurricane watch from Hurricane Irma as it moves closer and closer to the Lesser Antilles. That's what you're looking at right there, moving that direction. When arriving will perhaps tomorrow evening. So we do still have a while until this eventually has any sort of impact to the United States or even threatens an impact to the United States, because we're talking about just pushing that way for Tuesday night. Currently, it's moving at 14 miles an hour, winds at 115 miles an hour. That does put this at a Category 3 hurricane. Here's our potential path, and we'll put it into motion for you. There it is. Going to pick up, run over some warm water, run into a Category 4 storm, continuing off. This is our cone of uncertainty, so perhaps running over San Juan. As you begin to run over the Bahamas, that is taking you into Friday night. So we're still a ways away until this gets to the United States, guys, but maybe early next week. That's what we're looking at right now. Still a lot to be decided here in the next couple of days. Back to you.
All right, Adam, thank you very much. And as the focus turns to rebuilding, the next challenge is paying for it. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin now calling on lawmakers to raise the debt ceiling in addition to the first wave of recovery funds. Congress had planned to deal with the debt ceiling later this month, but Secretary Mnuchin says it has to happen now.
If Congress appropriates the money, but I don't have the ability to borrow more money and pay for it, we're not going to be able to get that money to the state. Without raising the debt limit, I'm not comfortable that we will get the money that we need this month to Texas to rebuild.
President Trump's request for $8 billion is just a down payment on a potential $180 billion recovery cost. Congress returns to work tomorrow after a 5-week recess. And the president does have plans to meet with lawmakers from both parties this week.
Well, speaking of Congress working or not working, President Trump expected to announce perhaps tomorrow the end to the Dreamers immigration program tomorrow, also known as DACA. And that he's also expected, though, to give Congress a 6-month window to act. And, Governor Greg Abbott from Texas, he was talking about this, and he said that, this would not be an issue if Congress actually stepped up and passed immigration reform. Listen to what he said.
We need to recognize that this is really a symptom of a larger problem that remains unresolved. We wouldn't have this whole issue about DACA if Congress would step up and pass immigration reform and do so in working with the president. We will continue to have challenges like this unless and until both the Congress and president step up and pass comprehensive immigration reform.
And those who are against repealing DACA focus typically on 2 major issues. One, the human aspect of it, which we're going to get to in a second, but there's also what they perceive as an economic toll that the country will face. And Steve Mnuchin also touched upon that yesterday as well.
I'm less concerned about the economic impact. We'll make sure that we have plenty of workers in this economy. We want to put more people back to work. There's a lot of people that left the workforce, and our objective is to bring them back into the workforce.
But, of course, as you can imagine, Democrats not buying it. Here's what some of them had to say. Bernie Sanders, he spoke out on Twitter. He tweeted that if Trump decides to end DACA, it will be one of the ugliest and cruelest decisions ever made by a president in our modern history. Taking legal protections away from 800,000 young people raised in this country is absolutely counter to what we stand for as a nation. If Trump ends DACA, Congress must act immediately to restore it.
And Tom Perez, leader of the DNC, says, I'll say it again, Democrats are going to fight tooth and nail for Dreamers today, tomorrow, and every single day defend DACA. But one thing we do need to realize is one common truth that you're seeing out of all this is that it is Congress's job to ultimately come up with the final answer. And what the president is struggling with right now, self-admittedly struggling with, is do we do away with it entirely? What happens to the 800,000 individuals that are currently here? What happens? I mean, that's sort of the fight that's going on in the president's own mind right now. And he's even said, I don't have a set answer, although it is leaning like he's going to do away with the program in the future. But for the 800,000 that are here, allow them to stay and figure things out.
And originally, the person that did not go through Congress as they legally should have done would have been President Obama to begin with. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, we will.
Well, the California governor, meantime, issuing a state of emergency. Let's head out west as the largest wildfire to hit Los Angeles rages out of control. The largest wildfire in Los Angeles County history. The L.A. Tuna fire, named after the area where it started Friday, has consumed more than 5,800 acres. 4 firefighters have been injured, but they should be okay. This comes as massive fires drive people from their homes in 7 other states, including Washington, Montana, and Oregon. I should say La Tuna fire. Well, in Portland, meantime, crews rescuing more than 150 hikers after one of those wildfires trapped them overnight. Dozens reuniting with their families after a search and rescue team led them 14 miles to safety. One hiker taken to the hospital. The rest are all okay. Authorities say that the wildfire was man-made, and it's still under investigation.
Minimum wage activists set to take aim at Republican governors as they rally across the country on this Labor Day. The Fight for 15 group aiming to raise the minimum wage to $15, writing on their website, quote, in 2018, the worst Republican governors, ones in battleground states, are all up for re-election. Let's throw them out. Fast food workers in more than 300 cities are expected to strike today.
Well, the time now is about 12 minutes after the top of the hour, and tensions reaching an all-time high with North Korea. Former CIA senior intel officer Tony Shaffer is meeting with the intelligence community later this month to discuss the issue, and he'll join us live up next.
Plus, chaos caught on camera. The shocking moment that an SUV reverses at high speed, slamming into that laundromat right there. 16 minutes after the hour now, and a Fox News alert. Breaking overnight, North Korea reportedly on the brink of another ballistic missile test. Former senior CIA intelligence officer Tony Shaffer is set to meet with intelligence officials later this month, but he joins us first to discuss this escalating threat. Good morning to you, Colonel Shaffer. And so basically, I want you to break down what happened with regard to the hydrogen bomb and how that compares to what we consider a run-of-the-mill atomic bomb. In other words, why is this so much more severe?
Yeah. Simply put, it's an order of magnitude more severe regarding the explosive effects. We figured out in the early 50s how to essentially do what we call a hydrogen enhancement to a weapon. We don't know for a fact that the North Koreans have mastered this. I mean, again, it's a two-stage explosion, a fission-fusion explosion. The fission goes off, fusion hits in. It is a order of magnitude. Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. We're talking about upwards of 100 to 1,000 kilotons above that. So this is a very severe, very important step forward if they've mastered it. The components look about right regarding the photographs, but we just don't know at this point.
Right. So what does the U.S. response need to be?
Needs to be a very stern, looking up square in the eye, saying this continued menacing of the allies in the region and us is not acceptable. I mean, we have to now accept the fact that Hawaii and other elements of the eastern seaboard could be hit by a nuclear weapon, and more importantly, the homeland could be hit easily by what we call an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. Right. They've actually, North Koreans have acknowledged the fact they're looking at this for the first time. And again, your audience can Google this. Something called Starfish Prime back in 1962 was our first experience with it, where this blast over the Pacific took out the power grid in Hawaii. It would be far worse today because everything we do now is electronically based, and it would be very severe.
I'm going to ask this question,
Sure.
and I'm sitting in a chair here in New York, so I am not obviously involved. You heard all the pundits say, you know, there's no good solution here. But at the end of the day, we need to come up with a solution. Right. What is that solution going to be?
Well, the solutions that have been tried in the past were feckless. Look, we've been on this path since 1994 and the so-called framework agreement by President Clinton. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is insane, and we have to stop that. So what we have to do now is lay out what we are not willing to accept and then enforce it. John Bolton spoke before about the fact that the Iranians are involved. We need to hold the Iranians accountable. People talk about how the North Korean program has been basically expanded quickly. It's because of the money we gave the Iranians got sent over to the North Koreans. Next, China. We got to hold China completely accountable. Look, this is one of those areas where we actually have more leverage over China to do the right thing than we think. We need to return, this may sound strange, we need to return manufacturing to the United States and tell China, look, either you help us or we don't need you. In a lot of areas right now you're making money. So we've got to look at all the things we can do to influence the North Koreans. The Chinese, the Iranians are both things we should do. And then most importantly, to basically make it very clear, the moment anything happens to any interest, you hit something, you hit Guam, you hit Japan, you're going to suffer a big price, and that price is going to be paid by Kim Jong-un. He personally will have to pay that price.
Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer, final question.
Sure.
How does this end?
Well, it ends eventually, someday, I believe, with the ultimate resolution of the two states, North and South Korea coming back together. Look, this is how East and West Germany finally came back together, and I think ultimately that would end it. The question becomes, how do you do that? And that should be our long-term objectives. With that said, in the meantime, we cannot stand for a madman, menacing the people around him and potentially using nuclear weapons to giving them third parties, terrorists, and other folks. It's not acceptable. One
of the most complicated international situations our country has ever faced. Sir, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Well, still to come, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour. Overnight, controlled fires burning at a Houston chemical plant this morning. Some brand new concerns about toxins in the floodwaters on top of everything else. We're live up next. We're back with a Fox News alert for you. The evacuation zone around the chemical plant damaged by Hurricane Harvey lifted overnight.
Yeah, the plant using multiple controlled burns to end the threat of explosions. Peter Ducey, live for us in West Houston as water contamination and other environmental concerns grow. Peter?
Todd and Heather, the Texans who live within about a mile and a half of that chemical plant that got 6 feet of water inside and lost their ability to stop organic peroxides from exploding are finally allowed to return back home. The Harris County Fire Marshal explained why with this, quote, a decision was made by Arkema Inc. in coordination with Unified Command to take proactive measures to ignite ignition of the remaining trailers through controlled means. The measures taken did not pose any additional risk to the community. As of last night, the Wall Street Journal reported there are still 13 Superfund sites that are still flooded. Those are places where toxic chemicals have been improperly abandoned that the government takes measures to stop from escaping and spreading. But the EPA says several dozen other Superfunds